In his first CBS 60 Minutes interview since 2020, President Trump fielded questions on topics from tariffs to immigration to the government shutdown, which now threatens to become the longest shutdown in U.S. history.
Democrats' fault.
As for Democratic lawmakers' demand that Affordable Care Act subsidies be extended before reopening the government, Trump stood firm by his position.
Obamacare is terrible, and we can fix it with the Democrats. All they have to do is let the country open, and we'll fix it.
On immigration, the president was asked if the methods used by ICE have gone too far.
I think they haven't gone far enough because we've been held back by the judges, by the liberal judges that were put in by Biden and by Obama.
Trump also addressed the upcoming Supreme Court oral arguments on whether his tariff policy is legal.
I think it's the most important subject discussed by the Supreme Court in 100 years.
So Donald Trump just walked out of a 60 Minutes interview. Yeah, you heard that right. The former president, now serving his second term, literally stood up mid-conversation and stormed off the set. And honestly, the fallout has been absolutely insane. This happened Sunday night. The interview was supposed to be this big primetime thing with Leslie Stahl, right? But it turned into something nobody saw coming. Well, maybe some people saw it coming, but still, the whole thing went sideways in the most spectacular way possible. And here's the wild part. Within hours, and I mean hours, this thing exploded all over social media. Over 500,000 posts, memes everywhere, the hashtag Trump Tantrum trending at the top. People were losing their minds trying to figure out what just happened. But before we go any further, real quick, let's be honest. You can't really trust mainstream media anymore. That's why we built Pump Politics, to bring you real stories, real context, and no corporate spin. If you want to stay ahead of the headlines, join our free newsletter. We'll send the news straight to your inbox every day. Just click the link in the description to join. And if you just want to support what we're doing, join us, be part of the community that actually cares about the truth. All right, let's get back to the video.
The president asked what happens to his economic plan if the high court rules against him on tariffs.
I think our country will be immeasurably hurt. I think our economy will go to hell.
The wide-ranging interview also covered topics including cost of living, foreign policy challenges, and concerns about the possible use of the military to combat crime in American cities. I'm Reed Binion reporting.
But here's what really gets me. This isn't just some random TV moment that we'll all forget about by next week. This is way bigger than that. Because what happened on that set, what Trump said before he walked out, it's exposing something massive about where we are right now as a country. Think about it. When was the last time a sitting president just got up and left an interview? Like, can you even remember that happening? I can't. This is unprecedented territory we're talking about. And the media? Oh man, they're having an absolute field day with this. Every network, every website, every talking head on TV, they're all dissecting this thing frame by frame, trying to figure out who was right, who was wrong, what it all means. But you know what nobody's really talking about? The actual reason Trump walked out. Because yeah, we can all watch the clips and see him get upset. We can read his posts on Truth Social afterward. But what was really going on in that room? What led to this explosion? That's what we need to dig into. Because I promise you, there's way more to this story than what you're seeing on the evening news. Trump called it an ambush. His exact words on Truth Social were something like, CBS and 60 Minutes refused to show the real story. Rigged. And look, you might roll your eyes at that. You might think, oh, there he goes again, complaining about the media. Same old Trump playbook. But hold on. Before you make up your mind, before you decide this is just another case of Trump being Trump, we need to look at what actually happened. Because depending on who you ask, this interview was either a complete disaster or a total setup. And honestly, both sides have some pretty compelling arguments. The thing is, this moment matters, like really matters. Because we're not just talking about one uncomfortable interview. We're talking about the relationship between the presidency and the press. We're talking about trust, or the complete lack of it. We're talking about how millions of Americans decide what's true and what's not, and that's terrifying when you think about it. Because right now, at this exact moment, half the country is watching the clips from Sunday night and thinking Trump was totally justified. The other half is watching the same clips and thinking he looked unhinged. Same footage, completely different realities. So what's the truth? Well, that's what we're going to figure out together, because I've dug through everything. The full interview footage that CBS released, Trump's statements afterward, the social media reaction, analysis from people on both sides, and what I found is honestly pretty disturbing. This isn't just about Trump's temper. It's not just about CBS being mean to him or whatever. This goes so much deeper than that. And by the end of this video, you're going to see exactly why this meltdown, this one moment on national television, might be the most important thing that's happened in politics in months. Because here's the reality. Trump's second term has been controversial from day one. We all know that. But this interview, this changes something fundamental about how Trump interacts with the media going forward. And more importantly, it changes how his supporters and his critics view every single thing he does. The stakes just got raised, big time. And whether you love Trump or hate him, whether you think he was right to walk out or totally wrong, you need to understand what really went down. Because this story, it's not going away anytime soon. The numbers alone tell you how big this is. 500,000 posts in just a few hours. That's not normal. That's not just another political story that trends for a morning and disappears. This is the kind of moment that defines a presidency. The kind of moment people remember years later when they think about this era. And the crazy part, both sides think they won. Trump's supporters are celebrating. His critics are pointing and laughing. Everyone's convinced they're on the right side of history, but somebody's wrong here. Or maybe everybody's wrong, because the truth is probably somewhere in the messy middle that nobody wants to acknowledge. So buckle up. We're about to break down the most explosive political moment of the year. We're going to look at what actually happened in that room. We're going to examine why it matters. And we're going to figure out what this means for the future of politics and media in America. And trust me, it's going to get wild. All right, so let's actually walk through what happened step by step. Because the clips you're seeing on social media, they're showing you maybe 30 seconds of a much longer situation. And context matters here. Like it really matters. The interview started off normal enough. Leslie Stahl asking questions. Trump giving answers. Pretty standard stuff for the first few minutes. They talked about policy, about his administration, about what he's trying to accomplish in his second term. Nothing too crazy yet. But then, and this is where things start to shift, Stahl brings up the 2020 election. Again. And you can literally see Trump's whole demeanor change. Because here's the thing. Trump has been asked about 2020 approximately 8 million times at this point. Maybe more. And every single time, he gives basically the same answer. He thinks it was rigged. He thinks there were problems. He's been saying this for years now. So when Stahl asks him again about election integrity, you can tell he's already getting frustrated. And she's pushing, really pushing. Asking him to provide evidence. Asking him why he keeps claiming things that fact checkers have disputed. Asking him if he understands how his words affect public trust in democracy. Heavy stuff, right? And Trump's getting more and more agitated. You can see it in his body language. He's leaning forward. He's interrupting. He's talking faster. Classic Trump when he feels like he's being attacked. And that's when things really escalate because Stahl doesn't back off. She keeps pressing him. And at some point, Trump just snaps. He accuses her of being biased. He says CBS has had it out for him since the beginning. He says the whole interview is rigged. Yeah, he used that word again, and that he's not going to sit there and be lectured to by someone who's already made up their mind about him. And then he stands up, rips off his microphone, says something like, "We're done here," and walks out, leaving Leslie Stahl and the entire 60 Minutes crew just sitting there in complete shock. Now, CBS aired the whole thing. They didn't edit it out. They didn't try to hide it. They showed the world exactly what happened. And that's where the real controversy starts. Because Trump's people immediately came out and said, see, this is exactly what we've been saying. The media ambushes him. They don't want a fair interview. They want to fight. And they want to make him look bad. And then they act all surprised when he calls them out on it. But the other side, and there's a lot of people on the other side, they're saying Trump couldn't handle tough questions, that he's so thin-skinned he can't deal with basic journalism, that walking out of an interview is childish and unpresidential and proves he's not fit for office. Strong words, right? So who's right? Well, here's where it gets complicated. Because both sides have valid points, and that's what makes this so frustrating. Let's start with Trump's perspective. And look, I'm not saying you have to agree with him, but you need to understand where he's coming from. Trump has been dealing with what he sees as hostile media coverage for almost a decade now. Every interview, every press conference, every public appearance, he feels like reporters are trying to catch him in a lie or make him look stupid. And honestly, some of them probably are. That's not a conspiracy theory. That's just how adversarial journalism works sometimes. In the 2020 election stuff, Trump genuinely believes, or at least claims to believe, that something wasn't right about that election. Now, courts have ruled against him, fact checkers have debunked his claims, but he's sticking to his position. And from his point of view, why should he sit there and let Leslie Stahl grill him about it for the millionth time? What's the point? She's not going to change her mind. He's not going to change his. So why waste everyone's time? Plus, and this is important, Trump's base loves when he fights back against the media. They eat it up. To them, him walking out wasn't a meltdown. It was him standing up to a system that's rigged against him. It was him refusing to play by rules that were designed to make him lose. And you can see that in the reaction online. His supporters are calling him brave. They're saying he exposed CBS for what they really are. They're sharing the clips with captions like "Trump destroys fake news." The engagement numbers are wild. We're talking millions of views on clips shared by pro-Trump accounts. Comment sections flooded with people saying things like, "Finally, someone who won't take their garbage," or "This is why we voted for him." The walkout isn't hurting Trump with his core supporters. If anything, it's making them love him more. But then there's the other perspective. And this one's pretty damning too. Because come on, he's the president. He's the leader of the free world. And he walked out of an interview because the questions were too hard? That's not a good look. Like at all. Critics are pointing out that every president deals with tough interviews. Obama sat down with Bill O'Reilly on Fox News. You think that was friendly? Bush did interviews with reporters who hated his policies. Clinton dealt with the Lewinsky scandal in front of cameras. None of them walked out. They answered the questions even when the questions were unfair or hostile. Because that's part of the job. And the thing about the 2020 election questions, Leslie Stahl wasn't asking about it to be mean. She was asking because it's literally one of the biggest stories in American politics. Trump's claims about election fraud have shaped everything that's happened since. They led to January 6th. They've led to dozens of state laws changing, voting rules. They've fundamentally altered how millions of Americans view democracy itself. So yeah, of course, journalists are going to keep asking about it. That's their job. Plus, and this is what really bothers a lot of people, Trump knew this was coming. He knew 60 Minutes was going to ask him tough questions. That's what 60 Minutes does. They're not there to make you look good. They're there to hold you accountable. So walking out like that, it looks like he can't handle scrutiny. It looks weak. And the timing makes it worse. Because Trump's been positioning himself as this strong leader, right? The guy who doesn't back down from anything. The guy who fights. But then he walks out of an interview with a 70-something-year-old journalist because she asked questions he didn't like. That's not a great look if you're trying to project strength. Political analysts have been having a field day with this. Some are saying it shows Trump's learned nothing from his first term. Others are saying it's actually a calculated move that he knows exactly what he's doing. And maybe that's true. Maybe Trump walked out knowing it would create exactly this kind of firestorm. Maybe he wanted the controversy because it keeps him at the center of the conversation. But here's what really bothers me about the whole thing. The actual content of the interview, the stuff they discussed before the walkout, that's completely buried now. Trump was talking about his economic policies, his plans for infrastructure, his approach to foreign relations. But nobody cares about any of that anymore. All anyone wants to talk about is the moment he stood up and left. And that's exactly what's wrong with where we are right now. Politics has become reality TV. Every interaction is a potential clip for social media. Every interview is a battle. Every moment is about winning or losing, not about actually informing the public. Trump understands this better than almost anyone. He knows that walking out creates a bigger story than anything he could have said in the actual interview. He knows his base will rally around him. He knows the media will talk about it for days. And he's probably fine with that. Because at the end of the day, we're all still talking about him. And for Trump, that's usually a win. So you've got these two completely different interpretations of the same event. And depending on which media you consume, depending on who you follow on social media, you're probably only seeing one side. Trump supporters are sharing clips that make Stahl look like a bully. Trump's critics are sharing clips that make him look unstable. And everyone's convinced they're seeing the objective truth. But for the rest of us, for people trying to understand what's actually happening in our government, for voters trying to make informed decisions, this whole circus is exhausting. Because we're not getting information anymore, we're getting performance art, and it's getting harder and harder to figure out what's real. The divide keeps getting wider. That's the scary part. Because every incident like this, every viral moment, every controversy, it pushes the two sides further apart. Trump supporters dig in deeper. Trump critics get more convinced he's dangerous, and the middle ground just keeps shrinking. Okay, so let's break down why this actually matters. Because yeah, it's dramatic. Yeah, it's entertaining in a train wreck sort of way. But there are real consequences to what happened Sunday night, and we need to talk about them. First, this interview showed us exactly where Trump stands with the media going forward. And spoiler alert, it's not good. Because if Trump's willing to walk out of 60 Minutes, one of the most respected news programs in television history, then what interview is he willing to do? Where can journalists actually hold him accountable without him just leaving? This sets a precedent, and it's a dangerous one. Because now, every time Trump does an interview, the journalist has to worry about pushing too hard. They have to calculate whether asking a tough follow-up question is worth the risk of the whole thing falling apart. And that's not journalism. I don't even know what to call it. Performance management? Image control? Whatever it is, it's not what the press is supposed to be doing. And Trump knows this. He's weaponizing his willingness to walk away. He's basically saying, you play by my rules, or we don't play at all. And for a sitting president to have that much control over how the media covers him, that should worry everyone. Left, right, center, doesn't matter. Because today it's Trump, tomorrow it could be someone else. And once that precedent is set, it's not going away. Think about what this means for future presidents. If Trump can walk out and face zero real consequences from his supporters, why wouldn't the next president do the same thing? Why wouldn't every politician start using this tactic whenever they face questions they don't like? We're creating a system where accountability becomes optional, where leaders only have to answer questions when it's convenient for them. Second, this is changing how Trump supporters view the media. And look, trust in mainstream media was already pretty low. We all know that. But moments like this, they make it worse. Way worse. Because Trump's base watches him walk out of that interview, and they don't see a president having a tantrum. They see a hero standing up to a corrupt system. They see proof that everything Trump's been saying about fake news is true. And you can argue all day about whether that's fair or not. You can point to fact checks and journalism standards and all of that. But it doesn't matter, because perception is reality in politics. And the perception among millions of Americans right now is that the media is out to get Trump, that CBS set him up, that Leslie Stahl was trying to embarrass him, and no amount of explaining is going to change their minds. The polling on media trust is already terrible. We're talking about numbers in the 20s and 30s for trust in mainstream news organizations. And every time something like this happens, every time Trump can point to an interview and say, see, they're biased against me, those numbers drop even more. We're reaching a point where large chunks of the population don't believe anything unless it comes from sources that already agree with their worldview. This creates a massive problem, because if half the country doesn't trust any news source except the ones that agree with them, how do we function as a democracy? How do we have shared facts? How do we even have a conversation about what's true and what's not? We can't, and that's terrifying. Third, this whole situation is reshaping political strategy for everyone, because Trump just proved that you can walk out of an interview, claim you were ambushed, and your base will support you anyway. In fact, they'll support you more. So what's stopping other politicians from doing the same thing? Why should anyone sit through tough questions if they can just leave and spin it as standing up to media bias? We're going to see more of this. I guarantee it. Politicians on both sides are watching what Trump did and taking notes. And the next time a governor or senator or whoever gets asked something uncomfortable in an interview, don't be surprised if they try the same move, because Trump showed them it works. At least it works with certain voters. And that's going to make political journalism so much harder, because journalists need access. They need politicians to actually sit down and answer questions. But if politicians realize they can just walk away whenever things get uncomfortable, what leverage do journalists have left? Not much. Already we're seeing politicians become more selective about which interviews they do. They stick to friendly outlets. They avoid tough questioners. They carefully control their media appearances to minimize risk. Trump walking out of 60 Minutes just accelerated this trend. Now politicians have another tool in their arsenal, the dramatic exit, and you better believe they're going to use it. Now let's talk about what this means for Trump specifically. Because yeah, his base loves this, but what about everyone else? What about independents? What about people who are still making up their minds about him? Here's the thing, Trump's hardcore supporters were already with him. Nothing Leslie Stahl could ask, nothing Trump could say or do was going to change their minds. They were voting for him, no matter what. But there's a chunk of voters in the middle. People who maybe like some of Trump's policies, but are unsure about his temperament. People who think he gets results, but worry about his behavior. And for those voters, walking out of an interview doesn't look strong. It looks unstable. So Trump might have energized his base with this move, but he probably also turned off some people in the middle, and in a close election or in a second term where he needs public support to get things done, that matters a lot. That plus, and this is important, Trump just gave his opponents a gift, because now they can run ads showing him walking out. They can frame it as proof he can't handle pressure. They can use it to reinforce every negative narrative they've been pushing about his fitness for office, and that's going to stick with some voters. Maybe not all, but some. The opposition is already cutting those ads, already working on messaging that uses this moment to paint Trump as unstable, temperamental, unfit. They're going to hammer this for weeks, maybe months, and some of it will land. Not with everyone, but with enough people to matter. So was walking out worth it? From Trump's perspective, maybe. He got the attention he wanted. He got his base fired up. He controlled the narrative in his corner of the media ecosystem. But did he actually help himself politically? That's less clear. And finally, let's zoom out and look at the bigger picture here. Because this isn't just about Trump and CBS and one interview. This is about where we are as a country. And honestly, we're in a really weird place. We've got a sitting president who views the mainstream media as his enemy. We've got millions of Americans who agree with him. We've got journalists trying to do their jobs, but getting accused of bias at every turn. And we've got a political system that rewards drama and conflict over substance and truth. That's not sustainable. Like, it's just not. At some point, something's got to give. Either we figure out how to rebuild trust between politicians and the press and the public, or we keep spiraling into this world where everyone lives in their own reality and nobody believes anything they don't already want to believe. And I don't have an answer for how we fix that. I really don't. Because it's not like Trump invented this problem. He just exploited it better than anyone else. The distrust of media has been building for decades. The polarization has been getting worse for years. Trump just figured out how to weaponize it more effectively than any politician before him. And now that he's shown how effective it can be, now that he's proven you can thrive politically by attacking the media and playing to your base and ignoring everyone else, why would any future politician do things differently? The incentives are all wrong. Being divisive works. Creating controversy works. Walking out of interviews and crying bias, it works. At least for certain politicians with certain bases. So yeah, Trump walked out of an interview, and on the surface, that might not seem like the biggest deal in the world, but what it represents, the precedent it sets, the way it's changing our politics and our media and our ability to have shared truth, that's huge. That's something we're all going to be dealing with for a long time. This moment is going to be studied. Political scientists are going to write papers about it. Media experts are going to use it as a case study because it perfectly captures where we are right now. The total breakdown of trust, the complete inability of different sides to even agree on basic facts, the way politics has become entirely about performance and tribal identity rather than policy or governance. And that's the real story here. Not the viral clips, not the memes, not even Trump's angry posts on Truth Social afterward. The real story is what this moment says about where we've been, where we are, and where we're headed. And honestly, I'm not sure I like where this is going, because once you break trust, once you convince half the country that they can't believe anything they see or hear from mainstream sources, how do you rebuild that? How do you create a functioning democracy when people can't agree on reality? How do you govern when every statement is viewed through a lens of tribal loyalty rather than objective evaluation? These are the questions we should be asking. These are the conversations we should be having. But instead, we're all just fighting about whether Trump was right to walk out, whether Leslie Stahl was being unfair, whether CBS should have aired it differently. Surface level stuff that misses the deeper crisis. But hey, at least it makes for good content, right? Can you believe this is where we're at? Anyway, that's the breakdown. That's what really happened with the 60 Minutes meltdown. And that's why it matters way more than most people realize. This isn't just another Trump controversy that'll be forgotten in a week. This is a fundamental shift in how politics and media interact. And we're all going to be living with the consequences for a long time. Let me know what you think in the comments. Do you think Trump was right to walk out? Or was this just another example of him not being able to handle accountability? The comments are going to be wild on this one, I can already tell. And if you made it this far, thanks for watching. I'll catch you in the next one.